Aid agencies have told us that no aid has gotten into Gaza through the southern crossings for a few days now. The US says nothing has come across through Kerem Shalom since it reopened. When will Israel permit aid to flow again through those two crossings?
So let's set the record straight here. Since the beginning of the war that Hamas has waged against us on October 7th, more than 500,000 tons of humanitarian aid have crossed into Gaza. Israel facilitated the insertion of this aid. We're talking about more than 400,000 tons of food. Hundreds of food trucks, as you know, and you've reported, have come in daily. Now, in recent days, what has happened is that Hamas fired multiple times, if I'm not wrong, at least 3 or 4 times at the Kerem Shalom border crossing. They fired from humanitarian areas and they fired from the eastern parts of Rafah to that border crossing, which is, the main artery from which the trucks are coming in. Hamas is trying to create a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Hamas are not only stealing the aid, Katrina, to feed their own war machine. They're not only stealing the aid to sell the food at tenfold the price in the markets. They're also firing at the aid routes, and including an aid route where the aid is transported from south to the northern parts of Gaza, by the way, on Sunday.
Sorry, Tal, just to bring it back to the question I asked you there, which is when will Israel allow that aid to come in again? There is a humanitarian crisis there. We've heard many descriptions of that. So I'm just asking you when that will happen again.
We reopened Kerem Shalom again and again. Hamas has attacked the crossing again. We will keep trying to reopen it again, and very soon you'll see trucks coming in. But you have to remember here that Kerem Shalom is not the only route for the insertion of humanitarian aid into Gaza.
Indeed, but there's nothing coming through. But there's nothing coming through Rafah at the moment, which has been the main crossing. The IDF now has occupied that crossing.
And Rafah will become operational.
When will that be?
Well, soon enough, when we'll announce. But Rafah will become operational.
Okay, so
I guarantee you that.
Okay, but you can't put a time frame on that. Just to bring it to the talks in Cairo that are ongoing.
In the coming days, yes.
In the coming days, okay. Just to bring it to the talks in Cairo that are ongoing to agree some sort of pause in this fighting to get those hostages out and to get aid into Rafah, into all of Gaza as it is needed, as we've been discussing there. Have you any update for us on how those talks are progressing?
So bringing our hostages back home is a top priority. We want all of our stolen people back, 132 of them, as you know, and time has run up for 38 of our hostages, as far as we know. We have been exerting military pressure on Hamas combined with diplomatic pressure because, as we've seen back in November, this is the only way to achieving a framework that will see the release of hostages. And we've been working, and I know that BBC has covered it, tirelessly, not only us, but also the U.S. administration and other international mediators to try to bring another such agreement that will see the release of the remaining hostages. But Hamas has rejected our offers again and again.
Okay, Tal, just to interrupt there because we don't have a lot of time. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I just want to get to the nub of this because those talks are ongoing. Hamas has accepted the current proposal. So I'm just asking you what the Israeli...
That's a cheap PR Hamas trick that unfortunately many media outlets have fell for. Hamas has put a counter-proposal. It has not accepted an existing offer, the very generous one that Secretary Blinken was referring to.
But what is the Israeli position? There is a delegation there in Cairo. Hamas says Israel is not serious about it.
Israel has put a very generous proposal on the table. That's the words of Secretary Blinken. It's not my words. A very generous proposal that Hamas rejected. Then they tried to turn the tables on Israel in a cheap PR trick that they played, saying that they accepted a ceasefire. But these were not the details that were discussed. It's like saying that I hereby accept a nomination to become the next UN Secretary General, but nobody's offering that. That wasn't the deal.
We're moving off topic there.
Nevertheless, we'll continue to pursue this diplomatic avenue.
Okay, so there's no update there. Just to bring it back then to what I'd like to get the Prime Minister's response to the announcement from President Biden to hold back on this shipment of bombs to Israel, big 2,000-pound bombs, because fears that they would be used in Rafah. What's the Prime Minister's response to that US decision?
So I can't speak to the specifics of these reports, and I listened to your reporter before because, Jerusalem and Washington, they have a certain way of addressing such issues between close allies, and that's
okay, but
behind
President
closed doors,
Biden
not in the public
President
eye.
Biden has said that himself.
As the Prime Minister said in recent days, and he spoke, with the Holocaust Remembrance Day in Israel, Israel will fight Hamas, even, if we have to fight them with our fingernails. We will achieve all of our war objectives, which include bringing our hostages back home, dismantling Hamas's military and governing capabilities, and making sure that Gaza will never pose a terror threat to us again. So but it's also, Katrina, important to underscore that, our war objectives, as we define them as a nation on October 7th, they have been supported from day 1 to day 215 by the United States. It's no secret that there are some differences, some disagreements, but we discuss them in different channels.
So you don't think the withholding of these bombs will make any difference to the Israeli war effort then?
We know that President Biden is committed to the security of Israel. So is the U.S. Congress. So are the American people. We see it in polls. The recent poll, by the way, that I saw just before going on air was that more than 70% of Americans support Israel operating in Rafah.
We're just almost out of time, Tal. Just on that point, the President Biden said he withheld those bombs to try to deter Prime Minister Netanyahu from a ground invasion into Rafah. From what you're saying there, it isn't a deterrent withholding of bombs, that the Prime Minister does still plan to go into Rafah with the ground invasion.
I can tell you that at the moment, and as you know, the past 24 hours or so, we've been focusing on the eastern parts of Rafah in a precise targeted operation where we've had intelligence that the Rafah crossing was being used for terror purposes. So this is the start of a longer mission into Rafah with ground troops? Is that what you're saying? I can't discuss operational strategy and things that are happening on the ground. These are things, these are matters for the IDF. Of course, we don't divulge what's going to happen ahead.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. We're out of time. Tal Heinrich, spokesperson for the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, thanks for joining us on BBC News.
Thank you.